Alright, what's up guys, and this is the best PvP build for the Great Axe Sword and Shield. So, I wanted to start things off by giving you guys an update on the build now that we're finally out of beta, however it hardly feels that way. There are actually a decent amount of changes that we were going to get into. Also, I'm working on an in-game breakdown video for you guys, so stay tuned for that as well. But anyway, let's get into this build. Let's start off with the Sword and Shield since not too much has changed here. So right off the bat, let's look at the main abilities we're choosing. First off, our best ability by far is Defiant Stance. Now, the reason why we're using Defiant Stance for this build is for a couple of reasons. The obvious reason is for the generous heal we get after it ends, which now has been buffed to heal you even if you switch out of your weapon. In the beta, you only got the heal if you let it end naturally, without switching your weapons out. And I would consider this a massive buff to this already great ability. So, looking past the heal, you can also see that it does a 30% damage reduction to all incoming damage. This increases if your health goes below 50% HP by a whole 20%. Bringing this whole total to 50% damage reduction. So the reason why this ability works so well in this build is because we're going to be using this to bait out enemy abilities by applying reckless pressure while at the same time being able to look for an opening to use our Shieldstone. Shieldstone is another top tier ability but pretty self-explanatory. It's a stun that can be buffed to last 3 seconds long, which will set us up for big damage. Anytime you get this to hit, the best thing you can do is get behind the opponent and hit him with a heavy backstab. Overall, it's a great ability. The only downside of it is its short range. You don't want to waste this ability, so be cautious when you use it and always look for the right timing. The only time you should be using this ability is when you know it's going to hit. So that finally brings us to our last ability being Backstab. Originally we were running Shield Rush, and I'm going to make a case for why we switched in a second, but to briefly go over Backstab, it's a high damaging ability that once you spec into it, gains grit and can also reduce the cooldown of your other abilities on hit. It's basically only here to help us reset our Defiant Stance just a little bit faster. The big reason why I picked it over Shield Rush is because first off, the range on Shield Rush is pretty short and the stagger leaves them somewhat far away from you. The damage isn't that good either, and there wasn't ever a really good time in our rotation to be using it. Having Backstab over this helps out your DPS a lot, and I think it improves the build overall. And finally for the passives. Now there isn't too much to talk about here. All this stuff we picked is just really to boost your survivability. If you want to hear me go more in depth about the passives, you can check out my first video or the link in the description. Alright, let's get into the Great Axe now. So our first ability we're taking here is going to be Charge. Again, this ability is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to give us our mobility to be able to either chase down or run away from enemies when needed. You always want to keep this ability in your back pocket. You don't want to throw it out just to do damage unless you know it's going to lead to killing your opponent. Other than that, this is your mobility tool and you should use it as such. Okay, so with Execute, we don't have too much to go over here. It's our biggest hitting ability. You use it anytime you get the chance to. Anytime they're open, you throw it out. And if you're lucky and they're around 30 to 50% HP, you're probably going to get the kill. It's got grit on attack, does huge damage, love it. Okay, now, Gravity Well, one of the most hated abilities in this entire game, and in my opinion, the best ability for the Great Axe. So we don't need the extra damage from speccing down the talent line, because the main use for this is going to be immobilizing your opponent. Any range attacker will hate you when you slap this on their feet. The range for the move is only 10 meters, so it's not the best, but it is unblockable and easy to aim. When this hits, you're free to unload big damage onto your opponent for 3 seconds before they can move again. I believe some moves can roll out of it, like the Mage's Teleport, so try to bait out the mobility moves by charging them first before you go for the Gravity Well. So for the passives here, all the ones on the Reaper side of the talent tree, it's just to give us some self-heals or to increase our damage. The most notable one is Greed and Revenge. Always keep an eye out for how much damage you're stacking. If you get max stacks with both passives, you want to throw your Execute ASAP. Always try to stack Greed in your opening attacks before you use your big moves like Execute. This will ensure you to be doing the most damage as possible. Oh, and I almost forgot to talk about Bloodlust. Bloodlust is fucking OP, you already know it.